show everybody trying to be a victim. Like, what's this girl, Meghan Markle? But I'm not a victim, baby. You will never see me on Oprah or Gayle crying.
What if I told you Meghan Markle's biggest downfall didn't come from the palace, the press, or even the royal family themselves, but from a single comedian with a microphone? For years, Meghan tried to control the narrative, first as the misunderstood Duchess, then as the brave outsider fighting against an ancient institution. She and Harry poured their story into documentaries, interviews, and streaming deals, all built on one idea: that she was the victim of a cruel system and relentless press. And for a while, people bought it. Sympathy poured in. Headlines framed her as a modern-day princess trapped in a royal nightmare. But all of that changed in a matter of minutes. On a stage lit brighter than any palace chandelier, Chris Rock turned Meghan's sob story into comedy gold.
Hit the fucking light-skinned lottery and still going on complaining, acting all dumb like she don't know nothing.
No careful headlines, no sympathetic framing, just ruthless punchlines that cut deeper than anything the British tabloids ever wrote. And here's the thing, it wasn't just funny, it was devastating. Because with every laugh from the crowd, Meghan's carefully built image cracked a little more. Suddenly, she wasn't the brave truth-teller, she was the queen of complaints, the duchess of contradictions, the punchline no one could ignore. What happened that night didn't just stay on stage. The roast spread across the internet, ignited late-night shows, and fueled endless memes. Meghan's narrative wasn't being debated anymore, it was being mocked. And once comedy stamps you as a joke, there's no PR machine on earth that can reverse it.
Lot going on to the news. My God, it's so crazy out there. What's going on with Meghan Markle? She thinks that everybody is just stupid. Like we can't see that she is manipulating his dumb husband. I really feel sorry for the family. I mean, everybody's fixating her on how good looking this guy.
So how did a 3-minute set from Chris Rock unravel years of branding, interviews, and royal drama? And why did the world laugh harder than Meghan's team ever could have imagined? Let's break it down. Before Chris Rock ever stepped on that stage, Meghan Markle's story had already been carefully written, not by tabloids, not by the crown, but by Meghan herself. From the moment she and Harry walked away from royal duties, the message was clear: Meghan was the victim, the misunderstood duchess trapped inside an institution too old, too rigid, and too cruel to accept her. And for a while the world listened. The Oprah interview painted a picture of heartbreak and racism, of late-night tears behind palace walls. The Netflix documentary doubled down, showing Meghan and Harry as a couple under siege, desperate to protect their family from the shadow of tradition and headlines.
There's a hierarchy of the family. You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
There was a war against Meghan.
Every frame, every soundbite was designed to make them look like survivors of an outdated machine. And at first it worked. Sympathy poured in. Meghan was seen as the outsider who dared to challenge the world's most famous family. She wasn't just a duchess anymore, she was a symbol, someone fighting back against centuries of royal control. But here's the catch. The story had cracks. People began noticing the contradictions. The couple who demanded privacy while cashing checks from one of the most public streaming platforms on the planet. The Duchess who claimed she knew nothing about royal life, despite years of interviews showing her fascination with the crown. It was only a matter of time before someone cut through the script. And that's exactly what Chris Rock did. Because when he stepped on stage, he didn't repeat the palace rumors. He didn't recycle the tabloid headlines. He went straight for the softest part of Meghan's story, the part she thought no one would dare touch. Chris Rock's entrance. The stage was set. Bright lights, a roaring crowd, cameras rolling for a worldwide Netflix audience. For Meghan, it should have been just another comedy show, the kind of thing that comes and goes without a headline. But Chris Rock wasn't there to play safe. He was there to take aim, and the target, Meghan Markle. From the moment he opened his mouth, Rock didn't tiptoe or build up slowly. He dove straight in, calling out Meghan's most fragile narrative, the idea that she had no clue what royal life would really be like. He mocked her claims of surprise about racism in the royal family, with a sharp line that had the audience howling, "It's the royal family."
I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family! They're the original racists!
You didn't Google these people? In just a few seconds, he stripped away the clueless victim act Meghan had leaned on for years. Then came the gut punch. Rock compared her complaints about in-law drama to something everyone in the audience could relate to. Sometimes it's not racism, it's just some in-law. The crowd erupted. Why? Because it was simple, sharp, and brutally honest. For the first time, Meghan's carefully polished narrative didn't sound tragic, it sounded ridiculous. And Rock wasn't done. He hit her with analogy after analogy, making it impossible to defend her innocence.
The fuck is she talking about? I didn't know. That's like marrying into the Budweiser family and going, they drink a lot.
Comparing Meghan's story to someone marrying into the Budweiser family and then acting shocked that they drink beer, it was comedy gold, but it was also a reality check. There was no polite applause, no forced laughter. The crowd was in hysterics, because Chris Rock had done what no journalist, no headline, and no palace insider had managed. He'd turned Meghan's sob story into a setup, and the punchline landed harder than anyone expected. But here's the twist. The real damage wasn't in the laughter, it was in the silence after. The moments when the crowd paused and thought, wait, he's right. And that's when the cracks in Meghan's image truly began to split wide open. The image cracks. For years, Meghan Markle worked to convince the world she was misunderstood, a duchess battling forces too powerful to overcome. But in the span of a few punchlines, Chris Rock ripped that illusion apart. The brilliance of his jokes wasn't just that they were funny, it was that they exposed something people had already started to feel but hadn't yet said out loud. The idea that Meghan wasn't the powerless victim she claimed to be. She was an actress, still playing a role. When Rock joked about Meghan acting shocked that the royal family might be racist, the crowd didn't just laugh, they nodded. Because deep down, even her supporters knew it didn't add up. She had spent years around wealthy elite circles. She had studied the royals, and yet she wanted us to believe she walked into Buckingham Palace like it was a surprise party. The punchline turned her excuses into theater, and the audience didn't buy tickets anymore. And then came the comparisons. Marrying into the royal family and being shocked at their traditions was like moving to Vegas and acting surprised there were casinos. Simple, brutal, impossible to argue with. Each analogy stripped away another layer of Meghan's poor me act. The most devastating moment wasn't even the laughter, it was the quiet. That split-second pause between jokes when the audience realized Rock was saying what they had been thinking all along. Meghan's victimhood wasn't heroic. It was entitlement dressed up as tragedy. By the end of the segment, Meghan's image wasn't fragile or sympathetic anymore. It was cracked, exposed, and fragile in a whole new way. The story she and Harry had spent years selling, privacy, dignity, resilience, suddenly looked like what Chris Rock called it, a performance. And once that curtain was pulled back, there was no way to close it again. Because what started as a comedy routine was about to become something far bigger, a global invitation for everyone else to join in. Global comedy pylon. When Chris Rock dropped his roast, it didn't stay on that stage. Within hours, clips were trending, memes were flying, and suddenly Meghan Markle wasn't a misunderstood duchess anymore. She was the setup for every comedian's next punchline. Where the royals are more than just celebrities, the gloves came off fast. Late-night hosts, satirists, and stand-up comics tore into Meghan and Harry with that signature British sarcasm. They mocked the contradictions everyone had noticed but few had dared to say out loud. The couple who demanded privacy while signing multi-million-dollar streaming deals. The ex-royals who claimed to hate the spotlight while staging glossy interviews and magazine covers. One comic compared Meghan's poor me narrative to royalty auditioning for a reality show, wanting the fame, the attention, the perks, but none of the responsibilities. Another pointed out the obvious. The nearest thing Meghan Markle ever had to a billion-dollar idea was marrying a prince, and even that didn't work out. The audiences roared, because the punchline hit too close to home. Across the ocean, American comedians piled on too. Jokes about Netflix money, Instagram sponsorships, and royal contradictions spread like wildfire. Meghan and Harry weren't being discussed as icons anymore, they were being roasted as punchlines, the living embodiment of celebrity hypocrisy. And it wasn't just comedy clubs. Twitter, TikTok, late-night monologues, the floodgates were open. Rock had cracked the seal, and now everybody wanted in. It was open season, and the more people laughed, the less anyone could take Meghan's narrative seriously. Because once the world starts laughing at you, it's not just a scandal, it's a brand problem. And Meghan's brand was about to face its biggest test yet: media and public reaction. The laughter didn't stop with comedians. Once Chris Rock cracked Meghan's carefully polished image, the media smelled blood, and they went in just as hard. Commentators who had once treated Meghan and Harry with kid gloves suddenly dropped the sympathy act. Talk shows and opinion pieces weren't asking whether Meghan had been mistreated. They were asking whether her entire story was just a business plan dressed up as victimhood. One analyst put it bluntly, The world isn't obligated to play along with your personal drama. That single line hit harder than any tabloid headline because it exposed the entitlement hiding beneath Meghan's narrative. She wasn't being silenced, she was oversharing, and the more she spoke, the less people wanted to hear. Meanwhile, the internet had a field day. Twitter users with barely a dozen followers suddenly had viral posts mocking Meghan's contradictions. TikTok edits stitched Chris Rock's punchlines over clips of Meghan's interviews, turning her complaints into comedy fuel. Memes spread faster than any press release could ever catch, and the media amplified it all. Instead of framing Meghan as the brave Duchess, outlets ran stories highlighting the backlash, the mockery, and the endless wave of online jokes. Even serious publications leaned into the humor, because that's what was driving clicks.
The nearest thing Meghan Markle ever had to a billion-dollar idea was marrying a prince.
Everywhere Meghan turned, the same problem followed her. She wasn't being discussed as a victim anymore, she was being laughed at as a character. A symbol of fame without responsibility, wealth without accountability, and a narrative that just didn't hold up under scrutiny. The roast hadn't just dented her reputation, it had flipped the script completely. Meghan wasn't the tragic figure at the center of royal cruelty. She was the punchline, and the crowd was global. And once the media joined in, there was no containing it. Because Meghan's problem was no longer the press spinning against her, it was the world deciding her story just wasn't believable anymore. The collapse of the brand. For most celebrities, a scandal fades. Headlines die down. People move on. And with the right PR spin, a comeback feels almost inevitable. But Meghan Markle's problem was different. She didn't just face criticism, she faced laughter. And once the world starts laughing at you, it doesn't stop. Every attempt at a reset landed with a thud. Meghan and Harry rolled out charity projects, posed for carefully staged photos, and sat down for glossy interviews designed to remind the world of their dignity. But no matter how polished the presentation, the echo of the jokes always drowned it out. A speech about mental health? People quoted Chris Rock's punchlines in the comments. A new charity appearance? Memes resurfaced about Netflix millions and sponsored Instagram posts. Even when Meghan tried to sound sincere, the audience had already decided it was all performance. That's the devastating power of comedy. It rewrites perception in a way no press release can undo. Every time Meghan appeared on camera, people weren't hearing her words anymore. They were hearing the jokes. They weren't seeing a strong woman pushing back against the crown. They were seeing the Duchess of Complaints, the reality star who wanted the title without the duty. The roast stuck like glue, and the more Meghan tried to talk over it, the more desperate it looked. Because once comedy brands you as insincere, the world treats every new move like part of the act. Instead of rebuilding, Meghan's brand began to unravel. The woman who once positioned herself as elegant and misunderstood was now trapped in a new role, the oversharing celebrity, the one people rolled their eyes at instead of leaning in to hear. And here's the brutal truth. Scandals can be survived, PR disasters can be managed, but becoming a punchline, that's permanent. Because you can outlast criticism, but you can't outlast laughter. Why Chris Rock's roast stuck. Scandals fade. Headlines disappear. Even the harshest tabloid stories eventually get replaced by the next big distraction. But comedy has a way of sticking forever. And that's exactly why Chris Rock's roast became Meghan Markle's biggest nightmare. The difference wasn't just that he told jokes. It was that those jokes revealed something people already suspected but hadn't said out loud. Meghan's contradictions were hiding in plain sight. She wanted privacy but signed multi-million-dollar deals with streaming giants. She claimed she knew nothing about the royals but acted shocked by traditions everyone else already knew. She said she hated the spotlight, and then ran straight into it with Oprah, Netflix, and Spotify. Chris Rock didn't invent those contradictions. He exposed them, and once he did, they couldn't be unseen. Every punchline was a mirror reflecting what the public had been quietly thinking. That's why the roast hit harder than any headline ever could. A tabloid story can be denied. A palace rumor can be dismissed. But laughter is agreement. When thousands of people laugh at the same joke, they're silently admitting, yeah, that makes sense. And the timing couldn't have been worse for Meghan. Rock's special aired right when public patience was wearing thin. People were already side-eyeing her constant complaints, already skeptical of the victim narrative. His jokes didn't create the backlash, they unleashed it. From that moment on, Meghan's brand was no longer about resilience or bravery. It was about irony, about contradiction, about a duchess who wanted the crown without the crown's weight. And here's the cruel reality. Once the world decides you're a punchline, every attempt to rebrand only feeds the joke. Because the harder you try to prove yourself, the funnier the punchline becomes. That's why Chris Rock's roast didn't just sting in the moment. It rewrote Meghan's image permanently. He didn't just land a joke, he dropped a label, and that label stuck harder than any royal title ever could. Final verdict. The joke that never died. In the end, Meghan Markle didn't lose her shine because of a scandal, a lawsuit, or even a royal feud. She lost it because the world started laughing. And laughter is something you can't silence, cancel, or outspend. Chris Rock's roast didn't just bruise her image, it redefined it. What once looked like courage, now looked like contradiction. What once felt like resilience, now felt like performance. And the cruelest twist? Every time Meghan tried to reset her story, people just laughed louder. That's the power of comedy. It can take years of carefully polished branding and destroy it in 3 minutes. So the question is, can Meghan ever rewrite her story again? Or will she forever be remembered not as the rebel duchess, but as the world's favorite royal punchline? If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because we're diving into even more untold stories, hidden feuds, and shocking moments from the world of celebrities and royals. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.